to welcome everyone and appreciate you spending some time with us this morning. And as always, we work to make the most of our time together. We're excited to engage with you this morning and answer as many of your questions as is humanly possible. It's really hard to believe that looking at the calendar, we're in the third month of the fiscal year. And just in kind of thinking about current events, and if you didn't see the news yesterday, we wanted to just stop and pause for a moment in remembrance of Queen Elizabeth II's passing, which happened yesterday. She was a stable leader for the world and an inspiration to many people, and in a time where I think we can all say that we need more women in positions of power. Queen Elizabeth showed the world that women could be women are strong and effective leaders. I'd also like to acknowledge the reality that many of you kind of maybe waking up to today, or maybe this is something that you all have been experiencing for longer, as the case may be, depending on where you're situated in California. But there's many areas of the state that are seeing not just high heat, but are also dealing with poor air quality that may be impacting how programs operate. And you may have a program, you may be in a program, or you may have children and families that are like not just dealing with poor air quality, but you're really close to a fire, and it's a very scary situation. So we wanted to just let you know that we are thinking about you. Our team is here to support, provide any resources that we can, and just urging that you're acting on kind of, health and safety of your staff, your children, and your family. So please be safe and take care of yourself. So coming back to our webinar and kind of the content in the webinar, we've shared in last month's webinar that there were a lot of exciting pieces in the budget. We know that there have been some proposed amendments to the budget that will impact some of the investments, and so we'll be sharing some of that out today. Naturally, as the amendments to the trailer bill are in print and they have not been signed yet, there will be some questions that we will be able to answer and some we won't. You may hear us say, this is what's proposed, until the governor signs trailer bill or other pieces. So you may get a response to your question that says, we're working on answers to your questions. So I just appreciate your grace and your understanding as we're going to do our best to answer as much as we can. And for the folks that are going to be providing those responses, I just express my appreciation for the team that you see on these webinars and folks that you don't see. I'm impressed and honored day in and day out by their commitment, their preparation, and their passion for for the work that we all love. So I think with that, I will turn it over to Virginia Early.
Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Virginia Early. I'm the administrator of the policy office within the early education division. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to keep my remarks here short because we'll be going through a lot of different policy things later today. So thank you all for joining us. And I'll turn it over to Bree, who will be our moderator today.
Greetings once again. I'm Bree Rude, and I'm an Associate Government Program Analyst in the Director's Office for the Early Education Division, and I will be your moderator today. To help answer your questions and to make this webinar run smoothly, we have a great team here with us today for every office in our division, along with the Early Education and Nutrition and Fiscal Services Division from the CDE's Fiscal Administrative Services Division. There is closed captioning available for you to utilize during this webinar. To turn it on, you can click on the CC button on the bottom right hand of your screen. Our team is truly committed to being as responsive as possible and will not be able to answer every single question. Just a reminder, our chat box is disabled. CDE will be able to share links with you there, but you are unable to chat with us. Please utilize the Q&A feature and to ask any questions you have. Next slide, please. Today, we have a pretty packed agenda. We will begin with our policy office providing an overview of the final budget and budget implementation updates, including some of the newly released trailer bill language for Universal Pre-Kindergarten and California State Preschool Program. Next, to support all of these budget changes, the California Department of Education is developing a number of management bulletins, so we will discuss what we can share on those. And we will finish our agenda with some UBK general updates. Lastly, we will respond to questions in real time through the webinar via our Q&A function. We will also answer some questions live at the end. As we do with each webinar, we will take unanswered questions and work on answering to post to FAQs on our webpage. Now over to Virginia to start our budget updates.
Thanks so much, Bree. So let's talk about 22-23 budget implementation updates. We talked in a previous webinar about how the budget for the current fiscal year was approved by the governor at the end of June. So we'll share links in the chat again for where you can find that information. Since we last had a webinar, the legislature has passed Assembly Bill or AB 185, which is pending on the governor's desk for his signature right now. So I'll put the link in the chat for that as well. So the changes that the legislature has made through AB 185 are going to be some things that we'll talk about today, but we really want to make it very clear that AB 185 is not yet law. It will not become law until the governor signs it, and he has until the end of the month to do so. But given the importance of many of these changes, we wanted to make sure you're aware of what is pending. So to start us off, I'm going to turn it over to Stacy.
As Virginia mentioned, AB 185, once signed by the governor, will make some changes in UPK planning and implementation supports. But before we dive into that, I want to briefly highlight again the graphic we shared at our last webinar, which highlights how investments in Universal Pre-Kindergarten fit into California's work to transform its educational system to deliver on an enhanced education promise. These investments will work together to provide access to full-day early education opportunities, including through investments in expanded learning programs, along with universal meals, community schools, professional development, anti-racism training, and mental health programs. On reflection, it's pretty incredible to be alive at a time when our state is investing so much in the promise of all of its children. In our last webinar, we also highlighted a $318.3 million investment in UPK to continue to support planning and implementation, including an $18.3 million investment to expand planning through the mixed delivery system. As with the investments highlighted in the Transforming Schools graphic, these planning funds are intended to work together with intentional connections across the mixed delivery system. Grantees will be specifically required to describe how they will collaborate in planning. Looking at the language in Assembly Bill 185, the Education Omnibus Cleanup Trailer Bill, we wanted to call out a few adjustments the legislature made to the grant, including specifying each county shall submit a single planning grant application and requiring the local planning council and the resource and referral program or programs, as the case may be, to co-sign an agreement and include it in the county's grant submission. This is not a competitive grant. The intent here is for local entities to collaborate and partner in planning for mixed delivery UPK. And to that end, the legislature further is requiring the county grantee to form a single working group that includes representatives from the County Office of Education, school districts and charter schools offering TK, resource and referral programs, alternative payment programs operating preschool programs, First 5 county commissions, LEA and community-based organization California State Preschool programs, general childcare programs serving preschool-age children, tribal preschool programs, private center-based preschool providers, licensed family childcare providers, educators, exclusive bargaining representatives, Head Start programs, child development faculty at institutes of higher education, and early childhood education teacher preparation programs, including institutes of higher education. The CDE is working on a few elements related to this grant program, including developing the letter of intent, the application format, and a plan template to support with local planning. As we work through the different elements, we will be consulting with our colleagues at the California Department of Social Services on implementation. Next slide, please. Another change from AB 185, once it is signed, involves the creation of a UPK work group. Specifically, AB 185 would require the superintendent, in consultation with the Director of Social Services and the Executive Director of the State Board of Education, shall convene a statewide interest holder work group. The work group shall include representatives from county offices of education, contracted state preschool programs, including those operated by school districts and by community-based organizations, transitional kindergarten programs, tribal preschool programs, educators, the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, First Five, resource and referral programs, alternative payment programs, contracted general child care programs serving preschool age children, Head Start, private center-based preschool providers, licensed family child care providers, researchers, and child development experts. AB 185 would require the work group to provide recommendations on best practices for increasing access to high-quality universal preschool programs for 3- and 4-year-old children offered through a mixed delivery model that provides equitable learning experiences across a variety of settings. The work group would also be required to provide recommendations to update preschool standards pursuant to Section 8203 to support equitable access to high-quality preschool and transitional kindergarten programs through the mixed delivery model and across all appropriate settings and funding sources. The work group will be established no later than December 1st, 2022, and although it is currently written that recommendations are due January 15th, 2023, our understanding is that this deadline will be pushed back to sometime in the first couple of months of 2024. Now that we have discussed some of the UPK work, Kate will discuss some of the fiscal changes to CSPP.
Good morning. Thank you, Stacy. My name is Kate Washington, and I'm a manager here in the Early Education and Nutrition Fiscal Services Unit. As presented in last month's webinar, there are significant changes to adjustment factors effective July 1st, 2022. The chart on this slide provides the old adjustment factor and the new adjustment factor by adjustment factor category. Specifically, the adjustment factor for children with exceptional needs and children with severe disabilities is now 2.4, up from 1.54 and 1.93 respectively. Previously, there was no additional adjustment for 3-year-olds, but effective July 1st, 2022, children who are 47 months or younger will now receive a 1.8 adjustment factor. Additionally, the adjustment factor for dual language learners is now 1.2, up from 1. And lastly, the adjustment factor for early childhood mental health consultation services is 1.1, up from 1.05. And the CPARES CSPP enrollment attendance and fiscal report has been updated to reflect the new adjustment factors for fiscal year 22-23 reports. And to account for the new 3-year-old adjustment factor, the category formerly known as 3- and 4-year-old children has been split into 2 categories. So I'll now turn it over to Lucy Mosqueda to talk about how COLA will be implemented in fiscal year 2022-23.
Thank you, Kate. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lucy Mosqueda, and I'm a manager in Early Education and Nutrition Fiscal Services. I'll be going over the cost of living adjustment or COLA implementation this fiscal year. So in fiscal year 22-23, Budget Act provided funding to support a 6.56 COLA effective July 1, 2022. As proposed in AB 185 and Ed Code Section 8242, beginning in fiscal year 22-23, CSPP contractors shall be reimbursed at the greater of the 75th percentile of the 2018 regional market rate survey, or the contract for child reimbursement amount as of December 31st, 2021, as increased by the cost of living adjustment. Next slide, please. We wanted to provide a few examples to show how the implementation of COLA may or may not affect a county's rate. Although the examples in this slide illustrate how a county's full day rate effective July 1, 2022 was determined, a similar analysis can be conducted for the part day rates. As a reminder, contractors will be reimbursed at the greater of the 75th percentile of the 2018 RMR survey, or the full day contract rate as of December 31st, 2021 with COLA. In these examples, each of the county's full day contract rate on December 31st, 2021 was $51.87. Applying the 6.56 COLA brings this rate to $55.27. Fresno County is our first example. Fresno's full day rate based on the 75th percentile of the 2018 RMR is $45.03. Its full day contract rate on December 31st, 2021 with the COLA applied is $55.27. Since $55.27 is the greater of these two rates, Fresno contractors' full day rate will therefore increase to $55.27. Los Angeles County is our second example. Los Angeles's full day rate based on the 75th percentile of the 2018 RMR is $62.66, which is greater than $55.27. So their rate will remain $62.66. This means that contractors serving in Los Angeles County will not receive an increase to their daily reimbursement rate. And Placer County is our last example. Placer's full day rate based on the 75th percentile of the 2018 RMR is $52.95, which is less than $55.27. Placer contractors' full day rate will also increase to $55.27. AB 185 provides greater clarity in terms of how the COLA will be implemented. In total, 44 counties will receive rate increases due to COLA. Of those counties, 40 will receive a 6.56 COLA, while 4 will receive a COLA that is less than 6.56 due to their current rate being higher than $51.87. Contractors who serve in counties where the reimbursement rate is increasing will receive an allocation this fall. I also want to briefly go over the minimum child days of enrollment, or CDEs calculator. Prior to January 1, 2022, the minimum CDEs listed on the contract base sheet were calculated by taking the contract maximum reimbursable amount and dividing by the contract rate. As many of you know, effective January 1, 2022, reimbursement is based on the county in which preschool services are provided. This means that contractors who serve in more than one county now have multiple rates, which complicates the calculation of the minimum CDEs. Beginning this fiscal year, minimum CDEs are no longer on contract base sheets. Because of this, the Early Education and Nutrition Fiscal Services Unit has developed the Cde Calculator to provide contractors with a tool to calculate their minimum full-time equivalent CDEs needed to fully earn their contract. The Cde Calculator can be found on the Cde website at https://www.cde.ca.gov/FG/AA/CD/. If you have any questions on how to complete the Cde Calculator, please contact your assigned fiscal analyst. I'll now turn it back to Virginia.
Thank you so much, Lucy. So we're going to dive in and go into some of our management bulletins at this point, going through one of our recently released management bulletins, as well as interim guidance on some of our pending management bulletins. There's a lot in this year's budget. We know that everyone wants to know all the answers right now. In some cases, we have to wait until the governor signs AB 185, but know that we're working behind the scenes to get what we can get out out to you all as soon as possible. So we released earlier last month a management bulletin, preschool dual language learners, which was management bulletin 2204. So we'll put the link in the chat for you so you can follow along. We know a lot of people have been asking questions about how they can copy links in the chat. Unfortunately, it's not possible to copy the links in the chat. You can click them and then copy and paste and save to your own document if you want to have them today. But we will also be creating an extra slides at the end of the presentation when we post these slides on the website. We'll be creating extra slides at the end where you'll sort of have every link that we put in the chat at the end of the slide deck, so that you'll have them if you weren't able to get everything yourself. So I just wanted to share that with everyone since we were getting a number of questions about that. We've also, in addition to releasing this management bulletin, we've released translations for 2 of the attachments in the management bulletin. So we'll share the link to those translations as well. Moving on to the next slide. These next couple slides are going to highlight a couple high-level things about the management bulletin. We really encourage you to read the management bulletin and go deeper with it, because this won't cover every piece of it. But we wanted to have a couple quick takeaways, and then we can have the opportunity to go deeper in questions. We're also working on additional trainings that will specifically focus on this one. But a couple of things about this, the directives in management bulletin, or MD 2204 directives. So first of all, this management bulletin requires contractors to follow a new process for determining whether someone enrolled in CSPP is a dual language learner. So that can be done in 2 ways. So that can either be done by conducting a family language instrument to determine the dual language status, and the family language instrument is an attachment to the management bulletin. It's a 4-question survey to help understand what children are exposed to at home and their community, what they understand, and what they can speak. So they can really, really use this they have to ask all these 4 questions, and if anything comes back that if there's any language other than English, that child counts as a dual language learner. However, and we'll talk about this a little bit more on a later slide in this presentation, there are some cases where through extended learning and care, where a child may be enrolled in TK or kindergarten and state preschool for the wraparound extended learning and care piece. And so in those cases, the child may have a designation as an English learner in the K-12 system. So contractors are allowed to, for those children, if they wish to determine DL status, they can obtain information on that child's designation as an English learner in TK or K. But that's only possible if the child is duly enrolled in CSPP and either TK or K for expanded learning and care. And the management bulletin breaks down a number of different ways that you can obtain this information. Then, once a child is determined to be a dual language learner based on either 1 or 2 of those bullets above you see on the slide, teachers or other designated staff must conduct the family language and interest interview for any children that are identified as dual language learners. And the intent is really to really make sure that we're providing support to dual language learners to support or multilingual learners to support their learning. For any child who's identified as a dual language learner or a multilingual learner, we also recommend contractors provide those families with resources on the benefits of multilingualism and ideas for what they can do at home to support the child's language development. And we've included some suggested resources in the management bulletin for folks to pull from. So going into our next slide, one of the top questions that people ask, of course, is when does this all go into effect? So really, we encourage you to start this process as soon as possible, because that gives you time to work out any kinks and think through what works for your agency. If you want to be relying on English learner data, how you might get that set up. But by January 1st is sort of the deadline for implementation. So by January 1st, all contractors have to be following the guidance in 2204 Management Bulletin for any currently enrolled children that will continue to receive services after January 1st. So starting January 1st, anybody that's still enrolled has to have gone through this dual language learner identification process. If they were identified as a dual language learner, they have to have received an interview. And then anyone enrolled after January 1st have to follow the timelines for receiving those things moving forward. Also want to highlight that the budget through Assembly Bill 210 has an adjustment factor piece that increased the dual language learner adjustment factor from 1.1 to 1.2. So wanted to really highlight this. It was talked on a little bit before, but what we're going to be doing is updating CPARIS to reflect the change. And prior to January 1st, 2023, contractors can either report the child days of enrollment within the dual language learner adjustment factor using their current process for identifying dual language learners, or by the new process set forth in the Management Bulletin. So if you are really sort of decide that, let's start this now, you go through everything and you determine the dual language learner statuses of all your children, you can immediately, and it turns out that identifies more children as dual language learners than the previous process, you can start claiming those adjustment factors now. But you can also keep your current process until January 1. But effective January 1, you have to be, the adjustment factor is tied to the determination under what is in the Management Bulletin. Going on to our next slide, there are also pieces in this Management Bulletin 2204 related to data collection. And this all comes from the bill, Assembly Bill 1363, that required CDE to both help contractors identify and then also collect data. And so you can see some of the data collection components on the slide. So that includes child home language, the languages the child uses the most, family guardian preferred language to receive communication, race or ethnicity, language characteristics of the program, and that includes but isn't limited to whether the program uses the home language for instruction, such as whether they're the dual language learner piece, or any other program that supports development of home language. And there's also a piece around language composition of program staff. We know people have lots of questions about the specific pieces for this. So what we've put on the slide is sort of what's in the statute. You can look it up yourself in 8241.5 of the Education Code if you want to see what's specifically there. We are designing a preschool language information system, or PLIS. And basically the way this will work is that contractors will put in the same user credentials that they use for the Child Development Management Information System, or CDMIS 801A data. And contractors will have the option to enter the data directly into the PLIS system or upload a file. The Management Bulletin includes a lot more details on sort of some of the timing, and then we'll be releasing additional follow-up information. So you're looking for that in the relatively near future. I'm now going to pass it to Danielle to talk about our eligibility and priority work through an upcoming Management Bulletin.
Awesome. Thanks, Virginia. Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle Davis from the Policy Office here at EED. Great to be here. Great to see you all. Okay, so let's start with the upcoming Eligibility and Priority Management Bulletin. This Management Bulletin is not finished yet, but it is in the process of getting finished and should hopefully be out late September, early October is what we're planning for. So, but just as a heads up for everyone, this Management Bulletin includes a lot of information. So when you read it, please read it carefully. Go through it probably multiple times. It's a lot of information, all things eligibility and priority, hopefully a one-stop shop for all your questions, but it's going to cover 24-month eligibility. It's going to cover the increase to the income threshold, moving from 85% of the state median income to 100% of the state median income. It's going to cover all the new eligibility categories. It's going to cover new enrollment priorities, and it's going to cover the new non-countable income changes. So I'm going to go on to provide a little more detailed information for 24-month eligibility, changes to eligibility, and changes to priority on the next couple slides. But for the other stuff, look out for that management bulletin. So at certification or recertification, all families in state preschool will now be given 24-month eligibility. So for Part Day, a child shall be deemed eligible for a Part Day California State Preschool program the remainder of the program year and for the following program year, if applicable age eligibility requirements are met. Sorry, tongue-tied, too many E's and not L's. So for full day, a family is considered to meet all eligibility and need requirements for services for not less than 24 months. If the eligibility period ends before the end of the program year, eligibility gets extended until the end of the program year without recertifying. And that's assuming they're still age eligible for state preschool. Contractors must issue a notice of action for each family that was enrolled on or after July 1st, 2022 to notify the family that their 12-month eligibility has changed to 24 months eligibility for full day. If a child is no longer age eligible for state preschool during the 24-month period, the contractor will notify the family of the date the child will be disenrolled from the state preschool. However, for Part Day, it's very important to notice any child that's receiving Part Day services beginning July 1st of this year, so July 1st of 2022, should be given this year, this program year, the 2022-23 program year, as well as the 23-24 program year, if they remain age eligible for both program years. So if you've already enrolled families for this program year and they've already started, which I'm assuming most have probably already done so, if you have not already issued a notice of action for those Part Day families to let them know that their eligibility has been extended, it is important that contractors do so that families know that they are eligible. You do not have to recertify them between the 2022-23 program year and 23-24 program year if you're in Part Day. Full Day, however, like I said, you're going to let them finish out their 12-month eligibility. Whenever it's time for recertification, then you're going to recertify. We have gotten a lot of questions about what to do about children transferring from Cctr to Csvp and from state preschool to then to Cctr for school age. I'm going to explain a little bit about what to do, and I'm sure you'll have some more questions, but this will also be addressed in the management bulletin when it's released. So keep that in mind. So if a child is transferring from general childcare, which is Cctr, to state preschool, the family will be issued a notice of action, switching the child from Cctr to Csvp, but the child would continue their 12-month eligibility from Cctr. And once the 12-month eligibility is up, the family is going to be recertified and then given their 24-month eligibility in state preschool. However, something to note here, parents can always voluntarily wish to recertify at times when they're not required to in order to extend their eligibility. So in this example, if a child transfers from Cctr to state preschool with 8 months left on their Cctr eligibility, at the time of transfer, the family can voluntarily choose to recertify and begin their 24 months rather than finalizing or finishing their original 8 months from the Cctr eligibility and then recertifying later. They can always choose to do it early, get it done with. That is statutorily allowed. We don't require them to do it, but they are, if they voluntarily request to do it, they're more than welcome. So please let parents know that that's an option if they have concerns about recertifying later. And then when transferring a child from state preschool to a school age Cctr program, the child will have to be disenrolled from state preschool. And this is really important because eligibility for state preschool is dependent upon age eligibility. So once the child is no longer age eligible for state preschool, they have to be disenrolled. So it's important to remember that children, and it's also important to remember that children that are enrolled in state preschool may not be eligible for Cctr. So for example, the state median income for income threshold for state preschool is now at 100%, where CCTR is still at 85%. So you want to make sure that any children that are transferring over are still actually eligible for CCTR when they transfer over. And then we would direct contractors to CDSS for instructions on what documentation is required when you're enrolling the child in CCTR, et cetera. But we did want to just let you know the child must be disenrolled. Their 24-month eligibility ends once they are no longer age eligible for state preschool. Okay, next slide. Okay, so then some changes to eligibility that are important to note. Part day and full day have both changed to allow all families enrolled to have 24-month eligibility, which we just talked about. And then both full day and part day also now allow children with exceptional needs to have categorical eligibility. And then 3-year-old children are now able to enroll under the FRPM eligibility, so the free and reduced price meal eligibility, and an updated list of schools with the FRPM eligibility for enrolling 3- and 4-year-old children is going to be released in a separate management bulletin. So I know you guys are all still using the old management bulletin with the list of schools, elementary schools, that says what elementary schools are FRPM. That list is going to be updated based on new data. And so when that time comes, we will notify everyone that there's a new management bulletin with the list. And then, so something that's specific to just part day. So part day now allows TK and kindergarten age children to be enrolled for state preschool extended learning and care. Please note that this is only applicable for part day state preschool. And then for full day state preschool, a new eligibility category has been added that allows children from families whose income is no more than 15% above the income eligibility threshold to be enrolled. So this also, this now aligns with part day. Part day has had this allowable eligibility category for quite some time. So now full day is being aligned to part day. And then it's also important to note that that is limited to 10% of your contract. So just keep that in mind. And the next slide, please. Okay, so changes to priority. There's a couple changes to priority. This is not an extensive list, obviously, of all the priorities, but it is important to note in the management bulletin, we will be laying out all the priorities in order. So it should be very easy to go and look and see the priority order. I'm just telling you, explaining them sort of in like without the additional context here. So when that management bulletin comes out, it will be very clear. It'll be literally first priority, second priority, third priority, so you'll know exactly where they fall. So for part day and full day, priority has changed for children with exceptional needs, with families that have income below the income threshold. They are now second priority for services. And these are children that are beyond the children in the set aside. So if you've already filled up your set aside for children with exceptional needs, that's when the rest of the children become second priority for services. So that's who is covered there. For part day state preschool only, TK and kindergarten age children for extended learning and care are now prioritized 7th after all other priorities. And then for full day state preschool, children from families whose income is no more than 15% above income eligibility threshold are now prioritized 5th. So I know this is lacking some context around all the other ones, but like all the other priorities in order, but these are the changes. And then when we send out the management bulletin, it will have all the priorities listed and they'll be bold so you know which ones are new and which ones are current. So just don't panic, I promise. We're on our way to give you some very much needed clear guidance on that. And so now I'm going to invite Virginia to come back and talk about state preschool extended learning and care.
Thank you so much, Danielle. And there's a lot here, and we're working to go as quickly as we can because we know you all need this information. So wanted to just highlight a couple things on Cspp extended learning and care. So first of all, as of July 1st, 2022, children that are enrolled in a TK or K program may be enrolled in Part A state preschool for extended learning and care services during the hours they're not receiving educational services in TK or K. I do want to point out that some of you may remember full day CFPP was an option for extended learning and care for TK and K students last year. Under the law changes in this year's budget, that is no longer the case. So wanting to make sure folks are aware of that. We're working on a management bulletin for this policy as well as we wait for Assembly Bill 185 to be signed by the governor. But some initial things just to note. First of all, our contractors are required to follow all current laws in place for state preschool, including eligibility, priority, and certification for extended learning care. And AB 185, which like I said is pending on the governor's desk, has some additional changes. Specifically, AB 185 would basically clarify that agencies may offer less than 4 hours each instructional day of services for extended learning and care through part day, and also authorizes state preschools that operate on an LEA campus to do a part day program with flexibility around operational hours and enrollment cutoff dates to better align with enrollment for the new school year. So we're working on a management bulletin on this in anticipation of that bill being signed. So you won't see that management bulletin until it becomes law. I will now pass it over to Jennifer to briefly go over some things on the management bulletin we're developing around children with disabilities.
Thank you so much, Virginia. Hi, everyone. Good morning. The CDE is currently working on a management bulletin on all changes to CSPP related to children with exceptional needs. The management bulletin will include guidance on the following: a change to the definition of children with exceptional needs, which we'll discuss more in the next couple of slides, categorical eligibility for children with exceptional needs, enrollment set aside and reserved for children with exceptional needs, which we mentioned in our last webinar is 5% for this year, 2022-23, and the adjustment factor for children with exceptional needs and severe disabilities, which Kate shared earlier. Next slide. Now we want to share the definition of children with exceptional needs. When a child is transitioning from an IFSP or individualized family service plan to an IEP or individualized education program, that child would count towards this required set aside. The definition in Ed Code 8205H includes that children with exceptional needs are toddlers enrolled in CSPP with an active IFSP and receiving early intervention services. When a child is transitioning from an IFSP to an IEP, the child does count towards the set aside until their IEP appointment. If the child qualifies for an IEP, the child continues to count toward the set aside. If the child does not qualify for an IEP, then the child no longer counts toward the set aside. Next slide. Preschoolers with an active IEP and receiving early intervention services or appropriate special education are children that qualify as a child for the set aside. Please note that if the child has no IFSP and is referred for an IEP assessment, then the child does not count toward the set aside until they have an active IEP. And just a note, the requirement for special attention from adults has been stricken from statute. Therefore, additional documentation previously required to demonstrate that a child requires special attention from adults pursuant to Title V 1770B is not necessary to receive the adjustment factor for children with exceptional needs or severe disabilities. And back to Virginia.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. So as you can see, there's a lot going on. There are some other management bulletins that we're working on, which you can see on the slide. We're getting very close on being able to release the state median income management bulletin. It's going through our final steps in our process. So we hope to get that one out very soon to you all, and that will have our income ranking table. On our hold harmless management bulletin, we'll also be working on getting soon, but just want to confirm the hold harmless that was in effect last year continues to be in effect this year. Family fee waiver management bulletin, we're also working on very close to finalizing, and that is going to be very similar to the management bulletin from last year. Again, the budget waives family fees for all families for this fiscal year, but the fee does still need to be calculated and assessed using the fee schedule that will be included in that management bulletin. We're also working on updating our management bulletin 2110, which is the non-COVID emergency closures. And that will be focused on closures due to circumstances beyond the contractor's control. And so that's going to talk about how approval is required for any contractors that close any of their sites and our classrooms due to inability of the contractor to operate. And that includes closure of classrooms due to repairs and renovations that have been authorized by CDE, lack of staffing, or due to circumstances beyond their control, like earthquakes, fires, or floods. So that's different from Management Bulletin 2110, which states approval is required only when a contractor has to close all of their sites and or classrooms. So finally, Danielle mentioned that we'll be updating our free and reduced price meals management bulletin. So there'll be a new list of schools, and also a highlight that now 3-year-olds are eligible for FRPM eligibility, whereas before it was only 4-year-olds. And we'll be clarifying in a management bulletin that the audit threshold increase for the annual audit has increased from $25,000 per year to $100,000 per year. So with that, we're getting close to the end, so I'll hand it over to Stacy for some more UPK updates.
There are many exciting updates from CDE in regards to universal pre-kindergarten. UPK office hours have resumed and take place every other Wednesday. This is a chance for attendees to ask questions and receive technical assistance about UPK implementation. Our next office hour is next Wednesday, September 14th. To receive notices about future office hours, subscribe to CDE's P3 UPK listserv by emailing subscribe to the link that is in the chat. Local educational agencies and county offices of education who received the 21-22 UPK planning and implementation and countywide planning and capacity building grants are required to submit data around the required questions from the UPK planning templates. These UPK planning and implementation grant program surveys were sent out on August 22nd and must be completed by September 30th. Additionally, the links to these surveys are available on our elementary webpage. There have been many recent penalty changes stated in education code that are related to transitional kindergarten class size, adult pupil ratio, and teacher education requirements. For more information or clarification of these penalty changes, please contact the School Fiscal Services Division at PACE, P-A-S-E, at cde.ca.gov. I will now pass it on to Alana for some workforce updates.
Good morning, everyone. We wanted to give you some minor updates from the Early Education System Support Office regarding workforce that could be interesting to you. So first, the Early Education Teacher Development Grant Funding Awards are posted. You can navigate to that list by going to the grants dedicated webpage and scroll down to the funding results link. We look forward to working with the grantees as they use those funds to build up their CSVP, TK, and K workforce. Yes, to the emojis I see approaching. For the workforce across California, and grantees can email the grant program team at earlyeducatorgrant@cde.ca.gov. I'll ask that Amira put that email address as well as the grants webpage link into the chat for you all. Second, during the August meeting, the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing, or CTC, adopted proposed regulations to establish the PK through 3 Early Childhood Specialist Instruction Credential. That means, so to adopt a proposed regulation means that the CTC voted to move forward with the draft regulations through the state's regulatory development process. The regulations address the structure of the credential, including authorization, credential requirements, and provisions for current credentialed teachers to add the PK through 3 authorization. Commission staff are currently preparing, I've lost my spot. They're currently preparing for the August meeting, and in the August meeting, they're going to go farther into the regulations and what is required to obtain this new credential. They're also preparing documents for submission to the state's Office of Administrative Law, or the OAL, for approval of these regulations. And this process can take 6 months up to a year for it to be approved. So once those regulations are approved, then the credential will be available for issuance. So it's not there yet, but we just wanted to keep y'all informed. Lastly, as I mentioned, with the CTC, they're preparing for their August 22 meeting, and there the commission is going to consider adoption of the preparation program preconditions, the program standards, and the teaching performance expectations for candidates for this credential. If the commission adopts these program preconditions and program standards and teaching performance expectations, the CTC staff will begin working to provide TA to the commission-approved teacher preparation program sponsors who wish to then offer the credential. If that commission acts in October 2022, at that next meeting, the commission staff anticipates that the agency should be getting to preparation programs beginning in 2023. Formal approval of these programs, however, only take place after the regulation has been approved and established for the requirements of the credential. Last but not least, the Emergency Specialist Teaching Permit in Early Child Education, also known as the Emergency Transitional Kindergarten Permit, or the ETK, yes, let's give an applause there, is an emergency specialist teaching permit in early childhood education that authorizes teaching of all subjects in the self-contained transitional kindergarten general education classroom. The ETK permit is only available at the request of the employing agency. Individuals may not apply directly to the CTC for this. Holders of the permit are restricted to services within that employing agency that requested the permit. This permit is valid for 1 year and is renewable one time for a total of 2 instances. For more information, I'm going to ask that Amira put the CTC's web link for that. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to our moderator, Bree, who's doing fabulous as we continue on to the question portion.
We really appreciate all of the questions that have come into the Q&A so far, and we will take time now to answer some of them live. However, if your question is not answered during this webinar, please remember that we are using your questions to inform the guidance we are developing in management bulletins and upcoming Q&As, FAQs. With that said, I noticed, Virginia, I'm seeing a lot of questions about whether children over income with exceptional needs can receive CSPP. So we can start with this question. Do full-day children with exceptional needs qualify for services without regard to income qualifications the same day as half-day?
Yes, thank you, Bree. So that question, that is one of the changes in the budget. So when we were talking about how children with exceptional needs are now categorically eligible, that means without regards to income. Now, depending on a couple factors, that child will be prioritized in different ways. So we talked about the 5% set aside. So there's a requirement starting this year that contractors reserve 5% of their funded enrollment to enroll children that have an IEP or an IFSP, which statute labels a child with exceptional needs. And we talked about that definition earlier. So if a child has exceptional needs of any income, they can be enrolled in that set aside. I believe it's lowest income first. If I miss something, Jennifer can come and add. Once the set aside is full, then you know, if you still have more children with exceptional needs that wish to attend your program, then there are specific places in the priority order where they would come in. So, so sort of how they get prioritized would depend on whether your set aside is full or not. So if your set aside is full and you're trying to enroll a child with exceptional needs and they have income below the threshold, then they would come in second priority, is what Danielle said. If they have income sort of above the threshold, they would come later. And so our priority and eligibility management bulletin is going to clearly state what those priorities are. So I think hopefully that helps answer the question. So that is a big change because children with IEPs, IFSPs that were from families over income have not previously been eligible for full-day state preschool.
Virginia, I'm going to call on you again. We have another question from Pat. The question is, if we have exhausted our wait list and have families whose income exceeds the 100% plus 15 extension and have an IEP, where did the question? I just lost the question.
Yeah, that's the same. That's the same
It's the
question.
same?
Sorry.
Okay.
I think I just clicked done on it, so it went away. Yeah, so that's the same question. So if you have sort of children that are over income that have exceptional needs, they are categorically eligible. And I think hopefully some of the pieces I just shared about where the priority would fit will help address some of those questions. But if they don't, feel free to follow up in the Q&A.
Perfect.
Take it out from under you, Bree.
Sounds good. Thank you, Virginia. I'm going to move on to a question from Mary, and Danielle, I'm going to call on you to answer. With 24-month eligibility, do we enroll students in CSPP Part Day with the previous year income?
Thanks, Bree. So when it comes to Part Day state preschool, I want to make sure that this is clear. So if you enrolled, I know there's a provision that allows us to enroll families 120 days prior to the start of the program year. So for this program year, if you enrolled families in, say, May, but they're not actually starting services for Part Day until August, what we're going to ask you to do is issue a notice of action that extends their eligibility for this program year, so 2023 and 2023-24. So they get both of the next 2 years for program years for whatever they provided to enroll for this year. I know that is kind of complicated. So even if they enrolled in May, you use whatever income they provided you, whatever documentation they provided you, however they qualified, you're going to now extend it for this program year and next program year. This is only for Part Day, and it's only as long as the child is age eligible. So if the child moves on and doesn't want state preschool next year because they're going to kindergarten, or they don't need it because they're going to kindergarten, you would disenroll them after this program year. But if they are staying, so if they're a 3-year-old and they're staying for this program year and next program year, they would get both years, and you would note that on the notice of action. That's what we mean by if they're no longer age eligible. So for full day though, that's a little different. Full day, you are not issuing just a blank notice of action to all your families. You're going to wait until it comes to their recertification date, and then you're going to give them the 24-month eligibility. So just so everyone is clear on this, this policy, it's because Part Day state preschool program, for this program year, they did not start until after July 1st. So any family that's getting services after July 1st, services that are beginning after July 1st, regardless of when they were certified, should be getting 24-month eligibility beginning July 1st. So for full day, if you certify July 1st and beyond, they're getting 24-month eligibility, or you wait till recertification. For Part Day, if they're getting services in the 2022-23 program year, you are getting 24-month eligibility as of now. I hope that clears that up a little bit.
Thank you, Danielle, for answering that question. I know we're at time, and we appreciate all of the questions and the participation. I'm going to kick it back over to Steve to close us out.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bree. And before we close out, there's 2 things that I wanted to share, make sure folks kind of knew about. So first, I'd be remiss if we didn't provide a public service announcement on some hiring that we're doing. You heard a lot of updates today and in past webinars, and it takes people to do these things. So in the next months, a number of these positions will be posting to the California job site at https://jobs.ca.gov. We are looking for a diverse group of experts, some of whom may be tuned into this webinar, to help implement and provide support to implementers. These positions include telework opportunities. So even if you see the posting and it says it's headquartered in Sacramento, please know that telework is an option. The other thing I wanted to mention is we had a lot of questions. We couldn't get to all these questions. Folks mentioned earlier that we have office hours. Our next office hours is going to be on September 14th. So that is next Wednesday from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock. We're going to kind of change up the format a little bit where we're just going to open it up to Q&A. So if you had questions that did not get answered, you can go to the link that Oh, no, I think that's a different link. We'll get a link in there. You can go to the link where you'll find the page where the registration link will be live later today. We do have registration for office hours because we have limited capacity on our line. Yeah, so those are two things I wanted to share. Wanted to appreciate all of you for taking some time to join us today. Kind of a special thank you to all of you. You know, your strength and passion helped us to get to where we are today. There is so much, there's so much just, I think, in front of us, lots of excitement, lots of things to work through. And we are going to get to a better place. You know, think about just kind of like where things were even 10 years ago. I often think about where we were with the recession and reductions, and just to think to be where we are today with so much investment in early education and education. It's just it's phenomenal. It's putting the money where we need it to go in our children. So thank you. I'll close out. I'll stop talking. Have a great rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend. And we'll see you soon.